Hey all you cool cats and kittens, and welcome to In Order of Preference, a show in which I talk about a musician, a director, or a general artist, and I rank their work in order of my preference. However, today we're going to do something a little bit different because it's the end of the year, end of 2020. Thank fuck for that. Be it COVID, the Conservative Party, or just general caucasity, this year has been a bit of a dumpster fire. However, something good that happened this year was the outpouring of very good media content. You know, media content, it was pretty good this year. So I am going to list my top 10 films of 2020. However, before I begin, a few wee disclaimers. Number one, I am aware that there are some films on people's lists that won't feature on my list just because I've not been able to see them. I live in the UK, so there's not a lot of opportunities to see the films that I really wanted to see this year that are legal. So for the people that have films on their lists like Nomadland and Promising Young Woman and Minari and One Night in Miami, etc., these films are not going to be on my list because even though I wanted to see them and I'm confident they would probably end up on this list, I couldn't. Okay? I wanted to, but I couldn't. Okay? Just leave me alone. Number two, there are a couple of these films that technically came out in 2019. They had their festival premieres in 2019. However, they were cinematically released in 2020 and have been featured on most lists of this year that I've seen, so I'm going to do the same thing. Right, now that's all out the way, let's begin! Kicking off our list at number 10 is Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always is Eliza Hittman's third feature film. The film follows Autumn, a teenager that has just discovered that she is pregnant, travelling across state lines to New York with her cousin Skylar in order to receive an abortion that she cannot receive in her home state of Pennsylvania without the consent of a parent. Hittman's direction is incredibly quiet yet vastly immersive. The film has very little dialogue, but a whole lot is discussed in the cinematography, as well as the silent faces and body languages of the performers. Despite it only being an hour and 40 minutes, it is quite a slow burn, but it is by no means lacking in momentum and force. The beauty of this film is that if you were looking at this person's story in real life, from the outside you would see nothing really happening. However, the film has a really unique way of immersing you in this character's story and their thoughts, while not making it obnoxiously obvious that's what it's trying to do. I feel bad for this film as well because I feel like it was a victim of an incorrect marketing campaign. When I saw the trailer for this, it painted it as a feel-good teen comedy, a general coming-of-age film that would make for easy viewing, and that couldn't be more wrong. It doesn't spoon-feed you like these coming-of-age films does. It lets you experience it for yourself and make up your own mind about certain themes, and also tackles weighty themes with a deadpan, matter-of-fact approach, which makes it all the more hard-hitting and thought-provoking. Sydney Flanagan and Talia Ryder also give excellent performances as Autumn and Skylar. This is just a striking film that definitely stays with you for quite a while. I can remember most of it very clearly, even in its understatedness, and I can't wait to watch it again. Horse Girl is a Netflix exclusive psychological drama starring Alison Brie and directed by Jeff Baena, with a screenplay written by the both of them. This got some heat. People did not like this film. They did not like it at all. But I really have to say, I had such a great time with this film. Horse Girl follows the character of Sarah, played by Brie, a shy, introverted young woman who is fascinated by horses, arts and crafts, and supernatural crime shows, who starts to realize that her increasingly lucid dreams are trickling into her waking life. This film is fucking crazy. Like, it really goes off, and I love it. All of the critiques on this film I just don't really agree with, or in my opinion, I just can't understand what they mean. I think the performances are great. I think Alison Brie gives one of the bravest performances of her career. Also, Molly Shannon as Joan, Sarah's co-worker, is heartbreaking. She is the most wholesome character, and I just want to hug her and thank her for her service in this film. The film does focus on mental illness for the most part, and I can see why people would be hesitant when it comes to that being portrayed in this kind of way. But Horse Girl is not trying to say this is what mental illness is, or this is what this specific mental illness is. It's not doing something like Split. Oh, fucking hell, remember Split? Jesus Christ. It's not doing something like Split did and said, this is the illness we're exploring and this is what it entails, because that's just offensive. Alison Brie drew inspiration from her own mental health and her family history of mental illness and combined it with these kind of films. If I'm correct, Jeff Baena and Alison Brie were very smart and self-aware when it came to this film, and very much leaned into the kind of weird, cliche sci-fi vibe, and it really worked, I think. It was really successful in doing that, and it was a good nod to those kind of films that already existed and paved the way for it. However, if this is not what they intended, oh no. Because the main thing that I took from this film is that it was really funny. Like, this film is ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. It did make me think differently about certain themes, but for the most part this was just a really fun romp for an hour and a half. And if Alison Brie and Jeff Baena were trying to create this profound, deep, meaningful film, they definitely failed, but they created something that was just so goddamn fun and haunting and mesmerizing, and something that really sticks with you for a while. Give it a watch, tell me what you think. Godlike titan of film, Spike Lee is back with Da 5 Bloods, and this time he's given us a war drama. I do not like war films. I think they're boring, and bordering on action films, which is my least favourite genre. They just do absolutely nothing for me. With a few exceptions, of course. When I think they're done right, I think they're done fantastically, and it will likely be a film that I'll never forget, but when they're forgettable, I will forget them within 15 minutes after watching it. Da 5 Bloods, however, was not something I was expecting, but was very happy to receive. The film is about a group of 4 aging Vietnam War veterans returning to the country in search of the remains of their fallen squad leader, as well as the treasures they buried while serving there. I said in my Letterboxd review for this film just after I watched it, it kind of felt like if Spike Lee ever tried to do a Tarantino film. It had that same kind of tongue-in-cheek humor that Lee does so well, coupled with the startling imagery and message, but also had the unpredictable action and stakes of a Tarantino film. This is definitely the longest film on my list at 156 minutes, however it really did not feel like that to me. I am not that great with long films, especially when we were in lockdown and there was so much other stuff we could do around us. But I was fixed on this film for its duration. That's almost definitely down to the direction, however it's also down to its incredible performances. Chadwick Boseman's performance is incredibly heartfelt and heartbreaking considering his passing this year. Clark Peters, Norman Lewis and Isaiah Whitlock Jr. are also phenomenal, but the real star of this film is Delroy Lindo as Paul. This man needs an Oscar for this performance. It was one of my favourite performances I've seen all year, if not my favourite. I've never seen a film portray a character that is a black Trump supporter in such a well-balanced way, incorporating themes of trauma and past political betrayal with subscribing to meaningless propaganda from the Republican Party. It's something I've never seen done before in a film, and Delroy Lindo absolutely nails it. I didn't think that Spike Lee could top BlacKkKlansman, but this is definitely at the same level, if not slightly better. It's also an incredibly important film when it comes to black lives, both in the Vietnam War and right now, especially considering the events of this year. I feel like I need a fucking psychology degree to talk about this next film. I'm Thinking of Ending Things is Charlie Kaufman's latest offering based on the horror novel by Ian Reid. The only plot summary that is offered when you Google this film is, full of misgivings, a young woman travels with her new boyfriend to his parents' secluded farm. That barely scratches the surface of the plot of this film, but I'm not going to tell you any more. Much like every other Charlie Kaufman film, this thing is a lot. It is a cinematic onion that you just keep peeling and peeling and peeling until you have no idea what's real anymore. I did have a slight advantage when it came to this film though, because I did read Ian Reid's book that it was based on, and I can safely say, if I hadn't read that book, I would have no idea what happened in this film. The book, while also being kind of confusing and hard to grasp, the film really runs with that marathon style. Another weird thing that I was familiar with that also helped me understand this film was the Oklahoma soundtrack, which is weird because it wasn't in the book, but it was featured heavily in the film. I was actually kind of disappointed that it strayed so much from the original vibe of the book. I was expecting a horror film until I found out that Charlie Kaufman was directing it, but I need to respect this film for the separate piece of art that it is. The film is haunting, claustrophobic, anxiety-provoking, discussing a lot of intense themes such as trauma, grief, suicide, death, and what it means to exist. If you want to learn more about the analysis of these themes in the film, I would very much recommend watching Karsten Rundquist's video essay on it. The performances are wonderfully peculiar and definitely add to the claustrophobia of the whole experience. This is your annual reminder to give Toni Collette her fucking Oscar! I had to process this film for a while before I really worked out what I thought of it, and as much as it is a good film, it's also more of a visual experience. It plays like a drug trip in this constant stream of unpredictable chaos in a controlled atmosphere. And the best summary I can muster for this film is, I loved it and I never want to watch it again. I was very disappointed when I saw Onward earlier on in the year. It felt like one of Pixar's weakest offerings. It was formulaic, unoriginal, and it had Chris Pratt in it. Ooh. My expectations of Pixar had been lowered slightly, however they have been exceeded and raised higher than ever by Soul. Joe is a middle school band teacher whose life hasn't gone quite the way he expected, but when he travels to another realm to help someone find their passion, he soon discovers what it means to have soul. Every single thing about this film is an innovation. The animation and general production is mind-blowing and a massive step up for Pixar, which is really saying something. The contrast between the animation styles in the real world and what is essentially the spirit world is striking, but it somehow makes perfect sense. I honestly couldn't stop looking at the lighting in the real world. It's absolutely stunning. Usually when it comes to Pixar films, I'm always prepared to bawl my eyes out, and I was surprised when that wasn't happening during this. Then the last 5 minutes happened and broke me completely. I had been foiled again! It also has a stellar cast, highlights including Richard Ayoade, Graham Norton, Daveed Diggs, and of course Jamie Foxx and Tina Fey. Although they're both questionable people, they both did outstanding jobs. This thing is just lovely and moving for everyone of all ages, the cinematic equivalent of a warm hug. I'd recommend it to pretty much anyone. Ouchie wouchie, this one made me grouchy. Fuck. Uncle Frank is a road movie set in the 1970s about a gay man that is forced to confront his past when he hears the news that his father has died. He sets off on a road trip back home with his niece Beth and is unexpectedly joined by his partner Waleed during the trip. This is an incredibly simple movie, but it really fucking broke me. A lot about this film is very warm. The camaraderie between the main characters, the colour grading of the film, and the general cheerful atmosphere that the character of Waleed conjures. But the contrast of the heartbreaking self-destruction of the titular character is so striking and effective when next to such a bright colour palette. Sophia Lillis kind of acts as the narrator of the film in a way and does a great job. I'm really excited to see what else she is capable of because she shows so much potential in the things she's been in already. However, this film belongs to both Peter Macdissi and Paul Bettany. Bettany's performance is breathtaking, one of the most tormented and tortured portrayals of alcoholism, guilt, and religious trauma. Macdissi's performance is also unbelievably charming and heartwarming, but also so heartbreaking when you see what the character has to go through to support the person that he loves. The film is, like I said, rather simple, and the ending is very much neatly tied up in a happy little bow, but it really is a sobering take on being a gay man in the 70s in the South, as well as being a wonderfully charming and at the end of the day a feel-good film. As soon as I heard the news that The Lonely Island were producing a Groundhog Day style time loop film starring Andy Samberg, Christine Milioti and J.K. Simmons, I lost my shit. And it's pretty safe to say that after watching the film, I have still not found my shit. Palm Springs follows two wedding guests stuck in a time loop, Niles and Sarah, as they develop a budding romance while living the same day over and over again. This is so much more than just a time loop romantic comedy. This film is hilarious, it's heartwarming, it's subtly progressive, and also challenging in certain ways. Andy Samberg gives the performance of his career, and I adore that man. I would die for him, but this is the best thing he's done by a mile. I'd probably also say that this is also Kristen Miliotti's best performance. The chemistry between them is just electric. This is champagne casting. J.K. Simmons also made me cry, but when does he not make me cry? He made me cry in fucking Whiplash, Jesus Christ. There's not a lot I can say about this film except that I just really loved it and had such a good time. It was definitely what I needed in the height of lockdown this year. It distracted me from all of the ridiculous shit going on and let me just zone out and enjoy this crazy story, but also be reminded that I have so much to be thankful for that I take for granted every day. A hidden gem that was covered under a ridiculous volume of Netflix releases this year was Residue, the directorial debut from Marawi Jarima. Residue follows a filmmaker who wants to write a script about his childhood home, but returns to that hometown now being an unrecognizable neighborhood. Oh, this film is so exciting. It's so exciting, my god. Residue refuses to follow the common conventions of films like it, and also refuses to follow the rules of linearity that are obeyed so often. The dialogue in this film is conveyed in a way that makes you feel like you are an intruder on every conversation. The intimacy and privacy makes you feel both like you're not supposed to be there, but you also want to know more. This might not make sense, but I feel while a lot of artistically experimental films are films that are occasionally interrupted by experimental colors and noises, this is a series of experimental colors and noises that are occasionally interrupted by a film. But the really fascinating part of this is that even though it is experimental and relatively difficult to access, it also makes perfect sense in the end and keeps you ebbing and flowing in the way that it wants you to throughout. Not only is this an incredibly exciting and original take on the theme of gentrification, this is an incredibly exciting take on filmmaking in general. Jarima's potential is absolutely mind-blowing, possibly one of the most promising up-and-coming voices in the film industry that I can think of right now. While this will definitely not be to everyone's taste, I really recommend that you give it a search on Netflix because I really feel like it deserves so much more attention than it's been getting this year. I've been trying to decide for ages if I wanted to put this film on this list because it technically did premiere in 2019 at the Toronto Film Festival, but it did have a cinematic release in 2020. But when it comes to cinematic experiences I had this year, I had to put this on the list. Saint Maud is a psychological horror film following a reclusive young nurse whose impressionable demeanour causes her to pursue a pious path of Christian devotion after an obscure trauma. It's also the full-length directorial debut of English director Rose Glass, who also wrote the screenplay. I was expecting a run-of-the-mill horror film when I went into this. What I was not expecting was the absolutely mortifying destruction of this poor woman. I'm not a religious person, but I've always been fascinated by the extreme effects that religion can sometimes have on people, and Saint Maud explores these themes and effects in a way that I have never seen before. The film is less than 90 minutes, but it still takes its time creating a slow build that makes you feel like you are losing your mind along with the protagonist. Similar to Horse Girl, it's one of those films that makes you question what's happening, if it's fact or if it's fiction. But while I saw Horse Girl as a funny, good time, I saw Saint Maud also as a good time, but in a completely different way. When I finished Saint Maud, I left completely appreciating the film, thinking it was excellent, but I wasn't feeling scared or upset by it, which is often the purpose of a horror film. However, this film lingers with you. I could not stop thinking about that last shot of this film for days afterwards. It really left a mark on me. I am absolutely blown away that this is Rose Glass's first feature-length film. The sensitivity and maturity that she uses when she approaches these themes and this character's story is so exciting, but the way it also honors horror as a genre before this film completely changed the game is also so well done. It's a film that I feel like could be enjoyed by the people who just like surface-level, conventional horror films, but can also be a gateway to more psychological, abstract horror as well. Morfydd Clark is absolutely perfect in the titular role, reminiscent of both the token horror film Small Child that is possessed by the devil and also the devil himself. If you enjoy your horror films, or if you just enjoy having general anxiety, I could not recommend a film that came out this year as much as Saint Maud. I don't want this video to drag on too long, whoops, too late, but I do want to give a shout out to some films that I really enjoyed and think you should check out as well. His House, The Wolf of Snow Hollow, Mogul Mowgli, These Documentaries, and SpongeBob SquarePants Sponge on the Run. Yes, I'm serious, it's a good movie, leave me alone. People keep dismissing the Small Axe film series as a television series. It's not a television series, it's an anthology of films. Therefore, this film belongs on this list. Have we got that sorted out? Yes? Great! I decided to only feature one of the Small Axe films on my list because if I listed them all, it would be half the list. But the number one film of the Small Axe anthology and my number one film of the year has to be Mangrove. I've always been a fan of Steve McQueen as a filmmaker and he just knocks it out of the fucking park with this anthology, especially Mangrove. Mangrove is essentially a historical drama based on the true events of the Mangrove restaurant in West London and the 1971 trial of the Mangrove Nine. It is a film about police brutality in the UK, which is needed now more than ever. The amount of racism in the UK that's surfaced this year and the amount of denial that racism exists in the UK is staggering. This film was broadcast on BBC One and was met with largely negative response by racist people refusing to acknowledge the racist modern history of this country. Ugh, anyway, enough about fucking idiots, let's talk about how good the film actually is. The piece is largely a courtroom drama, and I haven't seen the trial of Chicago 7, but what I've seen from the reviews and the general thoughts on it is that Mangrove did everything that Trial of Chicago 7 was supposed to do, but didn't. Mangrove is over 2 hours, but it does not feel like that because the minute it sets the momentum in the opening shot, it is consistent until the credits roll. The events of the film and the events that transpired in the 70s are absolutely blood-boiling. I'm simultaneously so glad a film like this exists, but I am so angry that a film like this has to exist. The screenplay is sharp, charming, emotionally exhausting, heartwarming and heartbreaking, all in the same script. The way that the characters are portrayed in both the script and the performances is unmatched by anything I've seen this year. No performance in this film is standout because every performance is damn near perfect. Even the characters that you are supposed to hate do it so well. I hate them so much that I cannot recognize the actors in those roles. This is an example of a perfect ensemble performance. If you took out even one of those performances, it would lose something significantly. This really is British filmmaking at its very, very best, with intense, visceral, unwavering commitment and huge muscular storytelling, asking challenging questions that need to be answered for the sake of societal progression. This film is the reminder that we need that racism exists in the UK. It's existed in the UK for a long, long time, and we need to do more than just not be racist. We need to expel racism entirely. I know it's not much, but I've put a few links in the description to petitions you can sign, as well as a few charities and causes that you can donate to. That was really long, I apologise, but that is us at the end of my list, my top 10 films of 2020. Hopefully 2021 will be a better year, and hopefully with even better films than this year, and that would be really saying something, wouldn't it? Ta-ra!